Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by Lines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, back with Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at 5 games here on Tuesday night after a day where Nate and I made some separate video picks for you, going pretty much undefeated all across the board, including those player props. We've also got another game video and player props for you today as well, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Also head to the Lines.com. You can check out all the great written content we have up there for you guys and use that odds finder tool that we have to make sure you're getting the best odds available to you guys from all those U.S. sports books this season. Nate, let's get into this 5-game slate and then talk about the game we're talking about here. A would-be marquee matchup, the Celtics and Bucks. Just not sure how many Celtics we're going to be seeing in this one.
Well, it sounds like they definitely won't have Tatum, Brown, and Marcus Smart. So that's a big hit, and the spreads climbed from +4 to +9 in spots. Total is at 225 here in Milwaukee. The Magic are +7 at Toronto. Kings, the other game we break down, +2.5 at Phoenix with a 233 total there. Warriors are on a back-to-back, +8.5 now at the Clippers. And then the Wizards, both teams on a back-to-back here, +3.5 at Portland, 235 total. I don't think you can set a high enough total for Portland right now. They have no D. But we are talking Celtics Bucks here, and I mean, this is kind of it's not like an aggressive stars out, bets up situation, but it is still, in my mind, the Celtics being undervalued, a little disrespected without Tatum. I mean, who is, don't get me wrong, a verifiable MVP candidate and a tough loss here in this Bucks matchup. Like, he's been particularly great against the Bucks. Like, it'd be one thing if it was Tatum out against, I don't know, the Warriors. I mean, this is the one team that comes to mind. It's like teams he struggles against, Miami sometimes. But, you know, he's really the key here in terms of their offense coming along against the Bucks in recent matchups. At the same time, I just think that there's enough of a supporting cast here that will step up the others, if you will. Like, Boston's third string team is pretty damn good still. Like, guys like Pritchard, Hauser. Now you add Mike Muscala to that mix. The guys that just were usually buried on the depth chart, but they've been thrust into spot start. And we saw Hauser come up clutch to basically beat the Sixers. Pritchard when he plays, and Derek White, what he's able to do with expanded usage. They will get Brogdon back in here. And Brogdon, he's only a couple years removed from being a verifiable 1A option on the Pacers, right? And on a solid Pacers team. He can handle the load as well. Big key is Rob Williams going to play? As always, that's vital against a Bucks team that is getting much better scoring in the paint, but still surprisingly 3-point heavy during this 10-game win streak. 41.5 3-point attempts per game, hitting a third of those, playing at a 102 pace, which is down from recently from how it started there in that streak, but. Under in 5 of their last 6, still playing at that pace. But the games are averaging 228, and they're limiting the 3-point attempts and makes from other teams. But Boston I think, is going to find a way to counter that. They're going to get their 3-point looks off. They have hit a lot against Milwaukee. I mean, credit Tatum for bending the defense in some ways in those. But I think Joe Mazzulla is doing a great job. I mean, their games... And when these teams get together, there just tend to be a lot of points, right? And Milwaukee also tends to not cover. It's really a trend, not just against the Celtics, but against a lot of teams the last 2 seasons when they have this kind of 10-point spread where, I shy away from it for sure, taking Milwaukee. Like, I wouldn't be aggressive betting the Celtics at +9, but I would definitely lean that way. I mean, the Bucks have won 7 of their last 8 home games against the Celtics, but they failed to cover 9 of their last 10 at home. So, I mean, I'm leaning here towards Celtics covering and it going over in any fashion you want. I think even if Milwaukee runs away with it, they're scoring about 120 at home. I don't think the Celtics are getting held below 100, even with their third stringers, the way I talked about them. And the pace of play at 102 or better, I think we're definitely looking at least, a 230-ish total here. So I think the over is probably my first look.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a better bet at this point than a 9-point spread. But I think what's interesting, we were gonna full transparency, like we were gonna talk about this game. When I started looking at it late last night on the West Coast, and everybody's out or doubtful for the Celtics, it was still at 4, so I hit it, by the way, and would recommend that you're staying on top of early lines for that exact reason. If you're able to look at an injury report and see doubtful for their best player and out for their second best player, and out for one of their top defenders, questionable for the couple others, I think with the way that this Bucks team's won 10 in a row, you still got to feel good about them at home in a situation where, yes, they at least beat the Celtics pretty consistently in these regular season matchups like this. Giannis goes off, Tatum usually goes off, and we can expect somewhere around like a 128, 122 type of game. But it's just not the same scenario now. And at -4, it's a wonderful bet. At -9, I think what's interesting that I was going to say here is, there's two ways that this could go, and I think that the game theories line up for either the Bucks to blow them out and this game to probably go over because they're going to get the 125 themselves and just need 100 points from the Celtics, or this is going to be a lot closer, but I still think it goes over the 224 because now you're talking about a game in the teens, maybe like 117, 114, 120, 118, something like that. But it's still close enough that the Bucks are getting their points, I think, is what we feel good about in this one. I mean, the way that this gets slowed down is, that the Celtics would really need to have a type of game without Tatum and Brown on the floor where they feel really good about their half-court offense and they're cutting and moving and they're sort of a positionless basketball. But it's just, that's not their team. They're not just like a big 3-and-D team. The way that they would love to play is have Rob Will out there so that they can at least press up on those Milwaukee shooters enough to also have somebody back there for when Giannis starts charging towards the basket. Obviously, they also really need Grant Williams for that reason, exactly, because he's also questionable. So I think if he's not playing, it's probably if one or both of them are not playing, it's going to be really tough for them to stop what Milwaukee's doing, even if they try to slow that pace down, which Milwaukee is not going to let them do. I think we know that, right? The last 10 with the 102 pace and the threes in transition, 14 made threes on like 38 attempts from deep during that time. They're chucking the ball a lot, still scoring, the 33%, but they're getting a ton of those up because of the fact that they want to play fast. They're getting a ton of defensive rebounds, the best defensive rebounding team in the last 10, which before, when Brooke or Giannis were out at one point this season, they were struggling to rebound for a while, and they've come back to be the best defensive rebounding team in the league, limiting three-pointers a lot better. But the Celtics are going to get them up tonight. Like you're saying, you look at who the backup cast is here and what they do when Tatum's not on the floor, especially, and it's going to be obviously a lot of Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White back there. But I really think that's where you need great guys like Grant Williams and Rob Williams to be able to provide something other than just shooting, because now you're talking about Hauser, Pritchard, Cornette, Muscala, right? Like, sure, Cornette's doing fine down low, but he's not going to be a rim protector the way that you would need once Giannis is in there. They're just going to need all the big bodies they can get to be able to hang in this one, is my opinion. So if you don't see Grant Williams or Rob Will out there, I kind of still feel good about the 9 for them at that point. I know it seems like stars out, bets up, but they're going to need a ton of three-pointers in this one to be able to hang, I think, and also keep them off the glass, where the Bucks have been getting second chance points in their last 10 to the tune of the third best, and that's just going to be a huge problem, man, if they're not able to stop the boards and stop Giannis barreling to the basket.
Well, this is eerily similar to Game 81 last year, where Tatum sat for rest and they played the Bucks and they were killing the Celtics. Like, how are you gonna, we need to play for seeding here. How are you just gonna like punt this game against the Bucks? And they hung though, 127-121. The Bucks won. Granted, Smart and Brown did a lot of the heavy lifting on offense, but Hauser and Pritchard were great off the bench. Daniel Tice chips in for 22, so it's not like the others that they have now in the front court can't contribute. And the Celtics hit 21 threes at 42%, which maybe you think is an outlier, but I mean, to me, it shows the sophistication of the scheme to be able to get shots without necessarily needing Tatum to bend a defense. He's only missed 3 games this year, Tatum. The first one against Washington did go hella over. Again, 51 bench points from the Celtics. That's exactly what I'm looking at here. Hauser and Pritchard leading the way. And then the other 2 did go under, were very choppy, but those are against Orlando and Toronto, 2 teams that aren't going to push the pace the way Milwaukee is at all, and aren't going to do their part of the scoring the way Milwaukee is during this 10-game win streak, where they're just, chalk it up, 119. They're probably scoring that. So I just trust the Celtics to come along enough to get at least, 6 or 7 more points there over 100 to get that total.
Yeah. I think that the total is the play once this gets up to its really high spread here for the Bucks. But I would still consider a money line parlay for them at the very least if you did feel good enough about them pulling, or if you feel good enough about the total, to be honest, because I feel good enough about them pulling out this W. And I think with and without Tatum this season, even if you look at the on-off court numbers, I think that's crucial, where they go from a 118 offensive rating with him on the floor to that 107 offensive rating with him off the floor, and that includes when JB's out there and Marcus Smart when they're available. So it does get a little bit stagnant this season, it seems, when Tatum's not on the floor to take some of that attention so that they can get those open threes. But I'm with you either way. I think they're going to get enough ball movement and enough 3-pointers up to be able to hang with the Bucks, who will do more than their part to get this thing over 224.5. So,
but Suns and Kings here, and the Suns, they don't have KD yet, but they do have a shot in the arm, and I mean they have Book back at least a little bit. It's good. The biggest thing is going to be like, what's his minutes limit at this point? He's played 2 games of their last 5 and been on what looks like a strict 26-minute count. But they haven't played since February 10th. So maybe at this point he's up to 30 minutes. We'll see. I mean, he's been a killer against the Kings in his last 4, 31 points per game, a plus 43, shooting 51% from the field. And the Suns won the last 3 meetings, all of them in Sacramento. So now they're at home. Whether Book's a part-time player or not, I do think that they have the advantage here because they've kind of just, sparked themselves defensively and from a competitive standpoint. I mean, they were in that funk for months. And then they get this huge trade, and now they're suddenly a championship contender. And I think that kind of cures a lot of ails. So in this 5-game road trip, since getting smacked by Atlanta at home to start the month, they are number 1 in terms of opponents' field goal shooting, number 3 limiting points off turnovers, allowing just 105 points per game with a 107 defensive rating. And that's, really impressive in certain margins at home that you need to stop the Kings, including the fast break points, the points off turnovers. They're number 6 in defensive efficiency overall at home. And the Kings, we look at, I mean, they're the highest scoring team in the NBA, but they score 8.5 fewer on the road. They shoot 6 percentage points worse from 3 on the road. They're 18-9 to the under on the road. The reason I'm worried about just saying let's hit the under is that the Kings defense has collapsed in their last 5, 2 of them against Dallas in overtime there, but they're allowing 127. They're 28th in opponents' field goal percentage, dead last in 3-point percentage. But they're a bad team guarding the mid-range all year and for several years, and that's why Booker has cooked them. What they do well is limit fast break points, and that doesn't matter. The Suns slow it down and play in the half court, especially with Chris Paul. Another reason to kind of lean under here, that they do play slower. And that, if Book isn't going to be a full-time player, you don't have to look at his splits on-off as much as you do like CP3 running this show, where they play 4 possessions slower. They score 6 points per game fewer this year. It all points to, kind of that knockdown, drag-out game that the Suns are much more likely to win with those 2 guys available than the Kings are. The Kings would much rather play an up-and-down game, which they do in Sacramento all the time, but they just have a hard time getting that kind of pace going on the road. And that's why they've struggled on the road to win, to go over. And they've actually struggled with extra rest, which they have here, 4-13 straight up, 3-9 against the spread on 2 to 3 days rest, and not a good record as road dogs as well. So Suns, I lean on covering just 2.5 points.
Yeah, I think you rely on what you know right now for this one. I mean, Sacramento as away dogs, not the worst record against the spread, 8-6 when they're away from home as underdogs against the spread, failing to cover by 5 points or so. Well, they're losing by about 5 points a game in those situations. I mean, as the away team in general, we know that they've been struggling all season as well. Decent against the spread though. That's the thing, is like they hang close in the games where they're not necessarily favored or expected to do much, but they don't necessarily do that by scoring a ton of points. What they've been doing on the road, and it's basically, I would say, their last roughly like 6-7 road games since basically the end of January January. They had a couple the back-to-backs against Mini, and then the like, after that they were on the 7-game road trip. And so they, in that time frame, they won a few. They played the Rockets twice, the Timberwolves twice, the Mavericks twice. So it was like a weird thing to kind of look at, because it was a bunch of those away and aways or home and homes for them. And in that time frame, though, you look at kind of like what they were doing, throughout the game. Interestingly, they have a really good fourth quarter net rating during that time, where they went basically 4-3 on the road in that time frame. But like I said, just playing much worse teams and teams that play a little bit more similarly to them in their style of play, like the Pacers, if you want to call the Rockets a style of play, and then the Spurs, right? Like teams that like to open it up and just keep the ball moving up and down the court pretty fast, because they don't have much else going for them in terms of offensive, let's say, efficiency, which is not the Kings, but it's just a more similar up and down style that I think that they were, sort of almost the better team in those situations a lot. And this isn't the case here. And I think, the way that you talked about how Phoenix has been playing, I'm really just looking at their last two right now. And even though, they're not playing the best comp in the last two, obviously the Hawks have been giving them fits throughout the season at this point in the last two that they've played them. You said it, they're basically 7-0 against teams not named Atlanta Hawks right now in their last 9 games. But in terms of the offense and the defense that they've been playing in that time frame, it's been getting contributions from guys like Josh Okogie and DeAndre Ayton during that time frame, both of whom are averaging over 20 points a game during that time. And I think you can expect, with Booker back in the lineup, for things to just sort of continue along that way. I mean, none of them are getting in his way with what they're doing, and I think he's just going to come in and be the complement that they need. Like you said, you kind of briefly mentioned, he crushes this Kings team. And just as importantly, I think, for the offense, you talk about how much better it is with him on versus off, and 7 points better per game, and in terms of per 100 possessions as well. But CP3 being on the floor also is a big boost for him, and a big boost for CP3's efficiencies as well. I mean, he scores way more points and gets a fewer assists once Book's not out there, as you might expect. But the way that the offensive individual offensive rating that he has when Book is out there is about 4 points better per 100, because of the fact that he's able to just kind of keep things flowing. He has that extra threat always that he can rely on to sort of bail him out no matter what situation the offense is in, with Booker getting his shot up over everybody. So the sort of pace of play, I do expect it to be a little bit chunkier. The Kings have been on the road since that time frame that I was talking about, in their last roughly 8 on the road. They're actually playing at a pace that's down to 10th fastest or whatever, or I'm sorry, 15th or so. It's 98 at this point, or 99. So it's not even like they're playing at that normal 102 that they're playing with when they're at home at that in Sacramento. So I think the under is a good play, because I think Phoenix is going to sort of dominate the style of play. They're going to dominate, controlling the tempo and the ball itself. In my opinion, I know Sac wants to get up and down and do their thing that way rather than set up in the half court, and that's exactly where Phoenix can continue to stop you, as they've been limiting fast break points, like you said, and limiting transition offense in general. So not a ton of ways that I find Sac is going to be able to score tonight, and I think Phoenix is going to be able to control this thing.
Yeah, and just some numbers to support this matchup. The Kings are 2-5 in their last 7 against the Suns. And those wins, one was the final game of last season, where the Suns had already locked up everything. The other was game 4, which they started 1-3, if you guys remember, and then they just rattled off 25 out of their next 28 wins and just completely went off. And the Kings, even when they're at home and they're scoring more, the games have averaged 234 versus 226 their last 3 in Phoenix, with a pace 5 possessions slower. And even in those home games where they've scored, I mean, they have a 108 offensive rating, just very poor efficiency, and sort of depending on unsustainable 42% 3-point shooting, which, as we mentioned, is just far, far worse on the road. And Malik Monk is also out, so that takes away another sniper for them. I just don't think, that they're going to be able to score enough. And whatever the numbers are in wins and losses for the Kings, I'm sure they have to score a lot more in wins. They're just not a very good defensive team, especially down low and in the mid-range, where the Suns are going to do their work.
Yeah, and actually also especially against point guards, which is kind of why I like Chris Paul a little bit in our player props. Not even a little bit. I like Chris Paul in our player props because I do think that the shot in the arm that you talked about with KD sitting there waiting in the wing, I think that gives them a much more, let's just say Chris Paul's motivation is going to be high. I think he sees the championship window now, and I think he has obviously good reason to believe that this is, if not their last opportunity, maybe their second to last, and they need to get things going right now. And I think we're going to see that from him as he dominates the Kings tonight. So, Nate, let's jump into your first play up prop. We got Porzingis here for the Wizards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm targeting the Blazers defense at every opportunity here. And they're on a back-to-back. So is the Zinger. But actually, he's been elite on back-to-backs this year. 8 times, 28.5 points, 8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, with his highest usage rate, 30%, and his best efficiency, 132 offensive rating. In his last 6, he's averaging nearly 30 a game, along with 8 rebounds, about 3 assists. And that includes 32 points on 9 for 15 shooting, 12 free throw attempts against this Blazers team that still has no Nurkic. So Drew Eubanks started on him and only played 18 minutes, was a minus 11. There's just no resistance down low. Portland, all their defenders are either traded or injured right now. And they're also on a back-to-back here. They have the worst defensive rating in the league the last 16 games. It's up to 128 in their last 9. So there's a reason that you're getting really poor odds on just the points for Porzingis. 24.5 is like minus 125. Maybe you want to just juke that up one, say he'll get 26, or look for player performance doubles and a potential win here. But I mean, I think you can probably bundle the points, rebounds, 34.5, or go 36.5 PRA. I think there will be a few more rebounds available with Portland on a back-to-back. Their offense is usually not as good. And I mean, they just searching for answers right now, as they did manage to beat the Lakers last night, but I just don't understand the moves that the GM made at this point, and how that's supposed to make them competitive down the stretch.
It's not. You don't trade Josh Hart like that and expect to be still as good at defense for what you're getting back. Jeremy Grant being out is definitely huge for them in stopping a ton of things down low. Now I think he's going to be playing. I mean, he has to be playing bigger, especially with Nurk out. And he would have been very helpful in limiting what AD did last night, getting 20 rebounds against this team in Eubanks. I think you can probably expect the Zinger and some combination of Daniel Gafford, especially with Kuz still out, getting with the rebounds he normally gobbles up. There's going to be plenty out there, like you said, with Portland Trailblazers and playing no defense. Playing at a fast pace, playing Dame ball. So just, going bananas on offense as much as they can and hoping that they outscore the other team. And I think Zinger's prime for the ability to take advantage of them right now. So I'm with that. I'm going to move on to a guy who I think his prop is going to get higher as this season continues to get towards the end of it, as Terrence Mann is going to be featured a lot more in this Clippers offense. 9.5 points still, so get it while you can. Minus 115 on FanDuel. I think there it's actually a little bit better, someplace like minus 110, but it's basically around there. You can also take the 13.5 points and rebounds combined for Mann tonight against a Golden State Warriors team that I think you can expect to continue to hemorrhage points the way they did to those Wizards last night. They did score 136, but gave up the 125. Probably a bit more of that tonight. Terrence Mann, in his last 5 alone, 12.5 points per game, 5 boards, and that's in 28 minutes. He's been inserted to the lineup actually 3 games ago after, we've probably expected guys like R. Jackson, Jay Wall, or at least the Clippers did, expected them to be traded, started putting Mann into the starting lineup right before they got traded. And so, that was about 3 or 4 games ago. Now that they're just not even around in terms of Jackson and John Wall to take any of his time and usage. In the 6 games without Reggie Jackson this season, Terrence Mann's gotten 32 minutes a game, 11 points and 5 boards, as well as 3 assists in that time frame. So I do think there's the possibility for maybe even a blowout tonight against this Warriors team, where you can expect Mann to continue to be in there as the young guy who I think they want to continue to get run, even if this game turns into a blowout. And the Dubs, allowing 36 points per game, good for their last 7 to opposing point guards on the season. They're still like bottom 3 in terms of allowing the most points to them, and a bunch of assists. And they're on no rest, where they are averaging an 118.6 defensive rating in those games on no rest this season, giving up a bet more than 118 points per game as well in that time frame. So I think it's a good opportunity for the Clips to score a lot. I think Terrence Mann's going to be a big part of that, even if there's sort of like some weird downtime where maybe Kawhi and Paul George aren't needed on the floor. I think you still get Terrence Mann out there and give him that run.
Yeah, it's a good call because Kawhi's props only have 22 points. So, I mean, books are kind of agreeing with you that this is going to be the other guys stepping up. And I like that you're just calling him the point guard, because the Clippers apparently have no point guard now, and they're just going to play positionless, freewheeling basketball, which is, exactly the type of style that you play against the Warriors, that you would expect Terrence Mann to get a lot of minutes tonight with the Warriors playing their small ball freewheeling guys. You never know who's going to be out for them on a back-to-back. So,
Yep.
yeah, just follow the minutes there, and the points and rebounds will definitely come for Man. One of the best rebounding guards out there.
Yep.
Yeah. Our under here is Scotty Barnes, 16.5 points. Again, not the best odds. -125 is the best I found it. You could try to bundle the points, rebounds, and assists, but I'm kind of scared of the peripherals just because he gets so many minutes right now. With OG out, he's playing at least 37 minutes per game on the season. His last 38 minutes per game, 12.5 rebounds, assists, but only 15 points. And the key thing here is in the last 3, Pascal Siakam's really started cooking. 33 points per game, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. I don't hate taking his PRA here if you're a little scared of the under here, because I think Barnes will be close. But Barnes' usage rate is down to just 15.8%, and that's with OG out, scoring 14 points per game. He actually scores fewer when Precious Achiuwa sits, for what that's worth. Precious is questionable as well. Gary Trent is questionable, but more it's just about the matchup against Orlando, which is just a tough front court team that doesn't really give up much to, big bodied guys. They're not going to get bullied down there. And in 3 against Orlando this season, Barnes averaging just 11 points per game, only 2 assists in 35 minutes as well. He had a good game the first time out, but the last 2 have been rough. He's a cumulative -40, only had 11 points in 41 minutes the last time, and a 6.62 line the previous one. So that's why you're getting tough odds on the under here, because he struggled so badly. But I just don't think he's going to be looking to score that often. He is kind of that point forward for them. So less involved as a scorer, especially when Siakam's cooking.
Yeah, man. Let me take this moment to give you your flowers on last night. One of the more impressive props you picked was over on Vucevic rebounds, but under on his points. So I feel like that was beautiful. And I feel like we're talking about a similar scenario here with Scotty Barnes here, where maybe he can get the peripherals a bit more in a game that might be a little bit choppier, maybe a few boards available on some missed shots, but that the points, just not feeling good about him getting those. And I think I would stick with you, even though there are the really crappy odds on it. It does feel like a really safe bet. So I'm going to finish things off with, as I mentioned, CP3 going over for the old floor captain, if you will, against this Kings team. And that's really what a lot of this is about. And I think, like we said, a shot in the arm for him. I'm going points and assists. When Booker's in there, he gets a few more assists, a few less points, which you would expect. So I kind of just want to combine them both here, as I think that the assists will be coming in droves. The last 5 that he's played with Book, 15.5 points a game, plus the 11.5 assists in 35 minutes. And like I said, I think he's going to be out there trying to make sure they get a W tonight, as they're trying to really make a run down the stretch here now that they know they're close to, if not title favorites. This is a Sacramento defense that is pretty much non-existent in their last 5, especially 125 defensive rating in that time, allowing the 52% from deep, 52% from the field, which is good for third worst, and 43% from deep, which is good for last. That's why I also like the assists for CP3, diming to some of those 3-point shooters now. Allowing the second most points per game to point guards, allowing the 10th most assists per game to point guards are the Sacramento defense, and they're allowing the 6th most assists overall in their last roughly 5 games, as I mentioned. So it's just a great opportunity for a Kings team that hemorrhages points and assists to point guards, and in general for CP3 to take advantage of that tonight with Book out there as well.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to use the odds finder tool and use your logic to get our viewers some better juice here, because if you said assists like 10 times, 10 assists is plus 108 at FanDuel. A double-double is plus 130 or plus 135 at DraftKings. So if you think he's getting 10 dimes and he's probably going to score 10 points, I'm just going to erase the points scored. In my mind, CP3 can easily go under 15 points, and then why not just go with him orchestrating everything and getting Book set up to maybe start cooking after he's had a few days off here.
Thank you, Nate. That is the play here. You're 100% right. And I'm glad that we have that odds finder tool to be able to tell us that, because I am talking about a ton of assists. And I don't know why I'm trying to throw the points in there so much, except for that, like I said, Sacramento just gives them up in droves. But why make yourself crazy needing CP3 to score when you can expect him to dime and still get plus odds on that? It's a very good call.
But to be fair, it should be a high-scoring fourth quarter, and he is clutch, and Book might not be ready to play the whole fourth quarter. So I think you got some points there.
Yeah, you're just trying to save my feelings. You're right. We should get the plus money on this one for sure. And that's all the time we have for you in this one. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Hope we have another undefeated night for you guys tonight, like we did to kick off the week last night. And until we see you next, happy betting.